This is A New Angle, a show about cool people doing awesome things in and around Montana. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Today I'm speaking with Nic de Castro, founder of LandTrust, a new venture seeking to connect landowners and recreationalists.
But we just get to work on a really impactful thing that touches, America's farms and ranches, food production, conservation, and recreation. It's a fun Venn diagram to be at the center of.
The LandTrust model creates new revenue streams for landowners and enables access to lands previously difficult or impossible for the public to access. Given the building pressure on working lands throughout the West, LandTrust offers an innovative and intriguing idea for sustaining economic viability. Nic, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, Justin.
So tell us, where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
Absolutely. So to your native Montanan's chagrin, I was born in Laguna Beach, California, and grew up
I wonder how many listeners we lost right there.
I'm sorry. I have to be honest, though. I have to be truthful. Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, surfing, fishing, spearfishing, hunting. And I know people are like, hunting in California, that doesn't sound like a thing, but it was, at least when I grew up there.
Sure.
So, grew up down there and just loved the outdoors. And then I went away to school on the East Coast. I went to Boston University for college. I lived in New York after that, in Chicago, San Francisco, LA, Boulder, and then up here to Bozeman in 2016. Kind of been all over the place.
Sure. So before we get into LandTrust, just kind of summarize your professional background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was not really much of a student. I think I graduated with a 2.3 GPA. I like working. Out of school, I went into sales and partnerships and went into the advertising technology and marketing technology space back in about 2010. So it was a really fun time to be in. It really exploded there. I spent all my time in digital, did a lot of influencer work. I think I was the first person to ever sell Microsoft, GM, and Adobe YouTube influencer campaigns back in like 2011, 2012. And that was a very terrifying thing for a brand to actually do. It was such a new thing. It sounds bizarre now. Obviously, every brand is, leveraging influencers across every platform as soon as the platform launches. But back then it was a traditional marketing mindset of you make a big, beautiful multi-million-dollar spot, and you run it on television, and, you control the narrative. Where we were saying, hey, this platform YouTube has got some people on here. You told us who you want to target. These people have those people watching their channels because of who they are authentically. And if you want that alignment, you need to let them speak authentically about your product or brand. And again, now that seems obvious. Back then it was pretty scary. So a lot of brands tiptoed in, and we were there. And early in my career, I helped them wade into the social waters.
Super. And that took you to various stints in various places around the country. How did Bozeman become a landing strip for you?
Sure. I had come up and fly fished a couple of times in my teens with my family on Rock Creek outside Missoula, and just Montana's beautiful. After my stint in Boulder, that was the first time I lived kind of near the mountains. I liked it. I liked, the offering there, but it's pretty busy. And Boulder's a pretty town, but it's kind of at that point where Boulder is just merging into one massive suburb of Denver. And I decided that I love the mountains. I love being close to the stuff that I'm passionate about, like being outdoors. But I wanted a little less people, and, Montana had always been there in my mind. Obviously, coming from the technology space, I needed to live somewhere where there's also some tech. So it was either kind of Missoula or Bozeman. And just Bozeman, I think, suited me a little bit better. So I made the move.
Super. So let's get into LandTrust. What is it, and what problem is LandTrust trying to solve?
So LandTrust is a land sharing marketplace. Your listeners may be familiar with home sharing platforms like Airbnb or VRBO. There's some car sharing platforms out there like Turo. We focus on land sharing. We work predominantly with agricultural owner-operators, so farmers and ranchers. Usually, almost all of our landowners who list their properties on LandTrust are multi-generation farm and ranch families. No, it's not to say every single one, but predominantly.
Yeah.
And they use LandTrust to tap into this outdoor recreation market. So we started the company with hunting because I wanted to use it, right? I was the customer seeking to solve his own problem. I in Bozeman, obviously we have tons of public land in Montana, which is awesome. We love public land and we use it all the time. But, there's a lot of private land that's right around that's beautiful and has its appeal too. And I just found myself saying, well, I'd be happy to pay that landowner for access to their place for a day or the weekend or whatever that might be. And there's just no easy way to do it. If you've ever, hunted or fished or done these outdoor activities, like, that door knocking is kind of how this stuff was done. It's uncomfortable. Like, let's be frank about it. I was a sales guy. I'm not a shy person. And even I didn't love going and doing that. And, on the other end of that too, especially working farms and ranches, these are very busy people. It's a distraction to their day. And as more and more, population has come into a state like Montana, let's say, that happens a lot more. So anyways, it looked like an obvious marketplace issue to me. There was an opaque market. I had been an early host on Airbnb's platform in New York City when I lived there in like 2011. And I just saw the power of the sharing economy and marketplaces. And it was kind of an obvious model for me for this issue. You can use LandTrust as a landowner to generate more income from your land by allowing people to come out and do fun outdoor activities, hunt, fish. We're just getting into the RV space, forage, all sorts of stuff.
And so one of the themes that we've explored, particularly recently on this program, is the pressure that private landowners are on, working lands in particular in the American West. The question is, it sounds like there's a strong argument for that. In your view, how big of a problem is it? Describe the kind of pressure that a lot of the private landscape in the American West is under.
Yeah. So of course you have different types of landowners. You have amenity landowners, and these are landowners who, buy property for its amenity value to them. So, hey, it's someone who's made some money and they want to own a beautiful piece of Montana or Colorado or wherever it might be. It doesn't have to be in the American West at all. But this is not their home. It's not working land. It's not how they make their money. It's just they were successful and they would like to own some land to do what they please. But again, we don't work a ton with those people, not necessarily for any reasons. But just they bought that land to do and have to themselves and just for their own recreation value. So generally speaking, they don't really want to, host other folks for that.
Right.
Kind of the center of the target for us as far as landowners and the folks that we partner with is multi-generation owner-operator farms and ranches. They live and work on the land. They produce commodities like beef and grain, etc. Those are very difficult businesses. They are at the mercy of many things that they cannot control. They don't control the weather. They don't control commodity prices. They don't control input prices. They don't control fuel prices. It's a very tough business. And it's arguably the most important business because it produces all of our food, fuel, and fiber. So farmers and ranchers can't disappear. We would all die. They still have to run a business. Finding every way they can monetize their operation to stay profitable is important. As people who love the outdoors, as I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this show, I would say we would like to see agricultural land stay agricultural because they provide not only food, fuel, and fiber for us, but also habitat and viewscape and all that stuff. So, I mean, look, I live in Bozeman. I live in what was a wheat field probably 5 years ago on Google Maps. It was still that field when I moved in. And, there's progress and, of course, the subdivisions and development. That is something that, of course, has to happen to some extent. But I also think that a lot of farms and ranches, they don't want to sell. They want to stay and they want to continue on the legacy that they've been passed down. But, I mean, economics are economics. And property taxes and commodity market prices and et cetera, et cetera. Like last few years, we're in drought. There's all these things fighting against them. And at the end of the day, it still has to be a business. There's a lot stacked against them. And if LandTrust can be a tool in the toolbox to help generate some income from this asset that could go to the bottom line, we see that as a positive thing.
And I assume there's a variety of sort of market and ancillary forces that you introduce into your model. I would assume that a landowner can make choices about,
of course,
sort of activities that they allow on their property. And then there's probably some sort of information revealing system. What I'm getting at is I can rate my Uber driver. And if the guy was a terrible driver, I put that on the app and it sort of is a problem solving information mechanism. So there's probably some sort of information system built into the platform that
absolutely.
that
Yes.
accounts for that. Maybe you can describe it better than I.
So LandTrust operates like a many, two-sided marketplaces. So on the supply side for LandTrust is landowners. So people who have land that has recreation value. And then on the demand side for us, the guests can be hunters or fishermen or foragers or RVers. And I think regionally around the country, you'll see different activities, maybe it's snowmobiling or, birding, stuff like that. If your listeners have ever used some of these other marketplaces, like an Uber, like an Airbnb, like a VRBO, some of those are Outdoorsy, the RV sharing platform, will all have the same type of componentry. So you can search, you can, make inquiries with the hosts, you can book it all through the platform. We have insurance, we do ID verification. And then yes, after the trips happen, the landowner rates the guest and the guest rates the landowner. And so you start to build up this kind of layer of trust. The goal being transparency is really what drives high quality experiences and allows for, potential low quality experiences or guests to be pushed out of the platform.
So an issue for many communities in Montana is a lack of affordable housing. And so a sharing economy business like an Airbnb has been criticized because it introduces the negative externality of people from out of town buying up properties and renting them out on short-term rentals, and that crowds out the market for people that want to live and work in a community. It would seem that LandTrust on the surface might present some similar problems. How is it similar and or different, and how are those problems maybe addressed differently with LandTrust?
Absolutely, the argument can be made for like lodging. One of the negative externalities of it is exactly what you said. Hey, I live in Bozeman, and in my neighborhood, I have buddies who own houses that they just Airbnb and they live in other houses. So you can make an argument that it's utilizing something that locals and local families could rent, long-term.
Right.
And the real key difference here is that lodging, like a home, is really a necessity. And so the problem that, that externality is created because when you list, a home on a marketplace like Airbnb or VRBO and it gets rented, it's 100% of its utility, which is lodging, is being used. So it can't be, used for local people. Land sharing is really interesting because, land has myriad uses. So it's not just like there's no one single use for land. And those uses can happen simultaneously, concurrently. And, for what we use it for, which is outdoor recreation isn't a necessity the way something like lodging is. Lodging and food are necessities. Outdoor recreation is amazing and a huge part of all of our lifestyles, and we love it. But you can't make the argument that, well, I won't live, or my family can't live because we can't go do this.
Right.
So, and all of our properties, while someone might be utilizing the recreation access on it for a day or 2 days, simultaneously that property is lodging the family that lives there. There's work being done on it, agricultural products are being produced. So it's a bit different than a lodging marketplace where like, well, you had an apartment or a home and it's being rented here, so 100% of its utilities being utilized by that platform.
And I would assume the same holds true to some degree, although it might be blurry with conservation value, right? The recreational use could have some influence, negative influence on the conservation value of the landscape. However, that has to be balanced against the revenue that usage creates and the potential that helps keep the land in a conservation usage or out of development at the very least. Mm-hmm. So talk about that aspect.
Yeah, actually, I might take the counter to that. I would say we have seen, if you put recreation value on land, well, let's just speak about this in very plain terms. So I don't know if you hunt or fish or, like a bird watch or anything like that. What makes a great property? A great property from like a hunter's eyes or a fisherman's eyes or someone who loves birding or wildlife viewing. It has high quality habitat for that wildlife. By placing value on recreation, the natural market forces will drive them to invest into that asset. So just like when Airbnb first launched, people were like, no one would ever pay me to sleep in the mother-in-law suite above my garage. And then they try it and like, holy cow, we made like $5,000 the first year. So what's the natural reaction? Oh, well, maybe we put Wi-Fi in there. Maybe we put a big screen TV. Maybe we put a jacuzzi out back and you can make more money. So in our world, in LandTrust world, where you're putting a value on the recreation access of a property, that is all habitat. So ensuring that there's healthy habitat and wildlife populations, is incentivized directly. Participation in the recreation markets, outdoor rec markets, through something like LandTrust actually places a heavy incentive on ensuring that that asset is invested in and sustains. And we've actually even seen examples of this already in our, we're not a very old company. We're almost 4 years old, but we have, ranchers who we've approached and started working with. And we said, hey, you have a lot of turkeys here, and, turkey hunters are, they would love to have access to come and hunt turkeys here. And, you get an incredulous look from a rancher saying, are you kidding me? Like, you could shoot all the turkeys. I don't care. They do a season with us and they make, who knows, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 from turkey hunting access. And we've had the same people call us and say, hey, can you introduce us to the NWTF, which is National Wild Turkey Federation, like biologists? I want to have better turkey habitat. And that's just a normal, rational actor in a market.
We'll be back to our conversation with Nic de Castro after this short break. A New Angle is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and UM's College of Business. Access to capital, broadband, and education are 3 ingredients any community needs for success.
Hi, I'm Nora Sachs. I'm the host and reporter of Richest Hill, a podcast from Montana Public Radio, and you're listening to A New Angle.
Welcome back to A New Angle. I'm speaking with Nic de Castro, founder of LandTrust, a new venture seeking to connect landowners with recreationalists. Speaking about realizing the value of assets, how does pricing on the platform operate?
So first and foremost, pricing is always up to the landowner. Now, we have a lot of landowners kind of say, hey, what do you guys think? And we're happy to sit down with them and we'll say, hey, we think you have, great fishing. Maybe you have a pond or whatever you might have. And there's some good hunting value here for hunting access. And, hey, do you have electric and water? Could you host an RVer? And so we'll just basically look at what the portfolio, so to speak, of things they could offer. And then we give them a price range because, every property is different. If it's a nice property and it's, a few thousand acres, yeah, that's great for recreation. If it's a nice property and it's a few hundred acres, that's also still great. Again, we will work with you, our landowners, to come up with pricing if they don't have something in mind. But at the end of the day, it's always up.
There's been some controversy in Montana over landlocked public lands or corner hopping in areas where, the grid ownership system is in place. Have you come up against that with some of your owners? Has that been an issue you've had to navigate, and how so?
No, I mean, we definitely have landowners. I mean, obviously landlocked public land exists all over the West. I mean, I think in most parts of the country, there are instances of it. The corner crossing thing, obviously there's been a bunch of conversation about it in Wyoming due to the case down there. We don't deal with much of that because we deal with just private land access. And so, that's all public land stuff. I think that the court should either say it's legal or illegal and just call it a day. I think that would be easy for the rest of us and we just move on.
Sure. So let's change gears here a little bit. Talk about sort of the mechanics of the business and bringing it to life. You're 4 years in, so down the road a little bit. I don't know if you would call yourself a startup still or not.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So at this stage of your life cycle, what are the biggest hurdles you face as an entrepreneur and as somebody trying to get an innovative tech platform off the ground here in the state of Montana?
We're definitely still a startup. We're under 20 employees, I want to say. We're still very much figuring out our market. I find it very intellectually interesting to try and figure all these problems. I mean, as a startup founder, your job is basically to look at a new problem set every day and try to come up with solutions with your team. It's not glamorous. It's a hard thing to do. And I think anyone who starts a business understands that it's very easy to look back and say, oh, wow, he's successful. How much fun was that? It's a very hard thing. Of course, the capital is absolutely needed and required to build and grow a startup like ours. But that comes with a whole nother, set of things that you've got to work with. And, luckily, when you get great investors, they can help you grow. But there's a bunch of stuff that you have to deal with as a founder that doesn't usually get glamorized. It's fun. I enjoy the team that I work with, and I love the business that we built. I love both sides of our marketplace. I'm super passionate about our landowners. I love hunting, fishing. We're getting into the RV space. That's all super exciting. I love it. but we just get to work on a really impactful thing that touches, America's farms and ranches, food production, conservation, and recreation. It's a fun Venn diagram to be at the center of.
Yeah, I would assume it recruits a ton of different skill sets for you. I mean, you have to manage development of a tech platform, and that brings with it a whole host of skills and abilities, but also the ability to then go out and connect with landowners and recruit them onto the platform and explain the concept, but also sort of perhaps educate them on, okay, this is how it works on your phone and all this stuff, like getting them up to speed there. Just a whole host of skills that you have to be adept in.
Yes, and I won't claim that I'm adept in all those skills, but I have a wonderful team
There you go.
who help me do all that stuff. And okay, I'm a biased sales guy, but I would argue that selling is everything. You have to sell investors to buy into your idea and invest into you. You have to sell employees to join a tiny little business that doesn't have a product yet or doesn't have any customers. You got to sell your early adopter customers and landowners to take a risk on you. It's all selling, not selling it with some sort of derogatory connotation to it, but you have to convince people to try things, to do new things and take risks.
It would seem that maybe, I've been thinking throughout this conversation, like one thing that sets your two-sided market business apart is that you're not trying to disrupt or undercut an existing way of doing business. It's not like Airbnb trying to disrupt the traditional hotel business or Uber trying to disrupt cabs.
That's right.
It seems like your competition is more lack of imagination.
Yeah, really powerful marketplaces, they bring in new supply. So they take people who weren't doing that activity before and started to get them to do that. Airbnb actually did this it started with Air Bed and Breakfast, right? So I have an extra room, you can sleep in it. That was never, someone with an extra bedroom never thought to monetize that extra bedroom before. So for us, our farmers and ranchers, they're very busy people. They spend 7 days a week growing our food, fuel, and fiber. And could they have done this without us or before us? Sure, they could have built a website. They could have, figured out insurance and payments. They could have done the online advertising to generate interest in their properties. And, some ranches have done that. Some farms have done that in the past. But what we do is we democratize that access to every farmer and rancher and landowner to be able to tap into this demand. And that's what platforms like ours are really powerful at doing.
And so you're 4 years in, still, in your words, decidedly in the startup kind of station of life. What is, describe kind of what success would look like a year from now, 5 years from now? What's your horizon?
Success is continuing our growth in the hunting kind of category. As I've mentioned, we started with hunting, and that's been the focus almost fully till now. We've had people booking fishing and some of these other activities too, just kind of organically. But I think over the next year, we really want to expand into a few of these other categories, RVs and camping being one of those, and just really establish ourselves as a brand in that RV mindset. In 5 years, I think my goal and hope for LandTrust is that we are the world's largest, outdoor experiences platform.
You could actually be on an Onyx map. I don't know if you view Onyx as a collaborator or a competitor or a friend or whatever, but like they bring up information about, the ownership of a particular piece of land. Gosh, it would be pretty cool to be able to, I got to be on that land, touch it on the screen and be able to get plugged into LandTrust to rent access at that moment.
So when you book a property on LandTrust, after the landowner accepts that booking, we'll send over a big kind of like welcome and arrival instructions and all that, and it will have Onyx maps of the property and waypoints and parking and gates and all that kind of stuff. So we do have we do partner with them in that way, and that could be something that who knows the future may hold.
Well, super, Nic. It's been so fun getting to learn about this innovative business, just all the problems that you're trying to solve and the novelty of the solution and just the opportunities that this presents not only to landowners to keep their lands in working use primarily, but also for folks that want to get out there and experience the landscape, as many of us in Montana like to do. So best of luck as this thing moves forward, and we'd love to revisit down the road and learn more about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. I really appreciate you having me on. And, just for anyone out there who's interested to learn more about us, you can just go to landtrust.com. If you're a landowner, there's ways to reach out and talk to us. We're real human beings here in Montana, so you won't get some sort of automated stuff. You can talk to someone and ask them any questions you want. And if you like getting outdoors, we do have listings in 30 plus states. We have over 1 million acres on our platform.
Super. And are you, since you're growing, are you hiring? Are you looking to find folks to add to the team?
We do have, I think, open job descriptions in potentially North Dakota, and maybe here in Montana too. So I think if you're someone who has a skill set that you think would be very useful to us, we field these all the time. So we'd love to hear from you. And even if we aren't hiring for exactly what you might be best for right now, we'd love to at least know that you're out there, and when the time comes, it might be the right fit for you.
Super. Best of luck, Nic.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to A New Angle. We really appreciate it. And we're coming to you from Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. A New Angle is presented by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. With additional support from Consolidated Electrical Distributors, Drum Coffee, and Montana Public Radio. Keely Larson is our producer. Ella Hall is our production assistant. VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music, and Jeff Meese is our master of all things sound. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.